2, 1.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Craig Perra from The Mindful Habit, and welcome to my podcast on addiction, sanity, sobriety, and success. Welcome, everybody. I hope you're having a great week. Thank you so much for listening. I want to start this podcast with a public service announcement. This public service announcement is for you, men. You women too, but this is mostly men. Please do not watch pornography at work. You will get fired. I just had a client lose his job. This is a client where we did incredible things together. And in my program, if you work with me one-on-one, you get lifetime support. Right? You get to continue to participate in group calls for as long as I'm breathing. And that's important because we all have different maintenance requirements in our addiction. How are we going to maintain the gains that we've achieved? Usually after an intensive therapy or counseling or coaching for a period of time, how are you going to sustain? I talk about that a lot in the Mindful Habit System. It is a cornerstone of the Mindful Habit System, and he stopped his maintenance. He stopped doing the things that made him successful. He watched porn at work, and he got fired. This is a good man. This is a great man who did incredible things. But I just want you to reflect on your maintenance plan and your personal infrastructure. So there's my public service announcement. Guys, it's stupid. You will get fired. If you work for a company of any decent size, they have an internet usage policy, which is mandatory termination for a breach of that policy. And that includes looking at adult content online. Let's shift gears. I want to talk today about all the positive attributes of addiction. Okay, yeah. No, you heard me correctly. I want to reflect on all the wonderful things about your addiction. Sounds a little crazy, right? Sounds a little strange. Sounds like, what are you talking about? Like this, my addiction to drugs, sex, and porn almost cost me my life, almost cost me my family, cost me 2 jobs. What do you mean the positive attributes of my addiction? Well, I want you to keep an open mind as you listen to this podcast. I mean, just keep an open mind and reflect on all the parts of your addiction that are fun, or that might be good for you, or that might be fulfilling a need, or that might be fulfilling a need. I want you to evaluate the positive attributes of your addiction with this statement in mind. All of your negative behavior is a function of your unmet needs. All of your negative behavior is a function of your unmet needs. I want to tell you a story about when I was soliciting prostitutes. I got a drug one I want to tell you too, but I want to start with the prostitute story. And this experience had a huge impact on me, or else I probably wouldn't be sharing it with you. So it did, and it does, and you need to know about it if you want long-term, sustainable success. So I remember distinctly going to see a prostitute that I had seen before. So I pull up to the hotel, I knock, I walk in. I notice on the little table that's in the hotel room, that's in the hotel room, there are 2 cans of beer. Now, for those of you hobbyists who've been in the game for a long time, you know that more often than not, prostitutes aren't going to drink with you. At least not the ones that, anyway, the prostitutes aren't going to drink with you, okay? They generally, at least in my experience, that was mine. The prostitutes did not drink for a variety of different reasons, to maintain their safety, make sure they keep a clear head. It's a tough job. It's a really, really, really hard job. And drinking and that line of work, often goes hand in hand, but not drinking with a client was a rule that I had experienced, all right? And so I'm kind of confused because there are 2 beers sitting on the table. And finally, I muster up the courage and strength to ask her, hey, what's that for? What's that for? And she looked at me and said, well, I got a beer for you. Oh, for those of you watching, you can see me clutching my heart right now. And I felt like I had won the Nobel Peace Prize. I felt like I had accomplished something. I felt so significant in that moment. She likes me. I'm different than the other guys. And it was in that moment, or my recollection of that moment, where I realized that my addiction was filling a very, very important need of mine, which was significance. So whether you use Maslow's hierarchy of needs or Tony Robbins' 6 human needs, Martin Luther King talks about this need to be significant in his speech, The Drum Major Instinct. Highly recommend. It's on YouTube. Martin Luther King's Drum Major Instinct. If you want a great lecture and speech from a brilliant man on psychology and significance. But here I am feeling like, oh my God, this is wonderful. You bought it for me? Like the Mutual of Omaha commercial, little tears coming down my face. And I am ecstatic. I am so overjoyed. Why? Because I was getting my need for significance met through that behavior. Okay? And I can either ignore that need that I have to be significant. We all have it inside us, by the way. Or I could recognize and evaluate the positive aspect. And I'm using positive in quotes here, okay? But you're doing this behavior every day, every other day, a few times a day. It's doing something for you. It is meeting an important unmet need because all of your negative behavior is a function of your unmet needs. Just think about that for a second, right? Because I need the gravity, the significance, if you will, of that statement for you to understand that, right? You have to see that we are need-seeking organisms. Every step we take, every breath we take, we're meeting needs. Even our negative behavior is meeting important needs in our relationship and in our lives. Our negative behavior is important. So let's reflect on your negative behavior, your addictive behavior, and let's try to tease out some positive attributes of your addiction. So let's say you're using drugs, right? Because I have been addicted to heroin, Suboxone, Ritalin, bath salts, crystal meth, OxyContin. I think that's it. So I have been addicted, physiologically addicted to each one of those drugs, in addition to my compulsive sexual behavior. So why am I using drugs? Why are you using drugs? Or why are you drinking? What does it do for you? What did it do for me? So listen, it helped me escape. Just stop there, right? Like even that's on the negative, positive side. It helps me escape. I needed to get away. I needed to disconnect. I needed to stop living this life that I hated. I hated looking at myself in the mirror. I just needed to get away. I needed to ease pain. Right? Anybody using opiates is in pain. And you're numbing that pain. Don't lose sight of that part of it, right? And it's my firm belief that people who use drugs or engage in any form of addictive behavior, but particularly the drugs, they're sick. They're sick. The drug is the medicine. So look at your drug as the medicine. What is that medicine doing for you, even though it may have deadly side effects? Helps me cope. Helps me cope. Helps me escape. Makes me feel significant. So right now, I want to just take a 30-second pause, and I want you to think about all the great parts of your addiction. All the parts that keep pulling you back in. Why are you doing this every day? See, this is important for another reason. Because most of you, particularly those entrenched in the disease-based modality of addiction, especially those of you who are religious, you may have demonized that part of you. You may have demonized addict. If you've demonized addict, then you got to go back and listen to my podcast about talking to your addict. Because when you start talking to your addict through this voice dialogue technique that I teach, you will see that behind the mask of addict, like Scooby-Doo, right? They pull off the mask of the monster, the demon, the beast. And when you ask that part of yourself where he came from, you will undoubtedly see the patterns that are producing your addiction today were taught to you as a child. Grow out of your childhood negative experience. Physical abuse, sexual abuse, mental abuse, or neglect. All of your negative behavior is a function of your unmet needs. So you have demonized this part of you, but when you engage this part of you and you start talking to this addict, right, you see, oh my gosh, wait a minute, this addict, this part of me that I hate, this is my inner child that needs love. This is the place in my life where I'm lacking love for self. And I'm filling that hole with drugs, with alcohol, with gambling, with sex, with porn. I am numbing, coping, and escaping. I am getting my needs met in a healthy, unhealthy, deconstructive way. Is that you? Is that you? Have you demonized your addict? Have you demonized a part of yourself? Are you fighting this battle? Well, guess what? This battle that you're fighting is you're fighting yourself, and you will always lose that battle. Forget about fighting. More loving. We need more love. And you will get to that love, and you will be able to sustain that love when you have a deep understanding of your unmet needs. So, what are the positive attributes of your addiction? Now listen, everyone who gets this exercise at first, most people are like, this is stupid. Here I am, my life is in complete turmoil, on the brink of ruin, and you have the audacity, the gall to ask me all the good things about it. But I mentioned before, you're doing it every day. It's serving a purpose. What purpose is your addiction serving in your life? Because here's what happens. Here's what happens to this list. When you look down at your list, and I'll share you mine. I'm numbing pain. I'm coping. I'm escaping. There are various parts of my addictive patterns around strip clubs and prostitutes that suggest a desperate and significant need to be significant. Connection. Some of you, there's a connection that you're experiencing, or it allows that rebel inside of you to have a little bit of fun. And what else? What do you got? What else? What are the positive attributes of your addiction? And I strongly encourage you, when this podcast is over, to sit down with a piece of paper and start writing this down. Overcome the initial hesitancy of this is stupid. It's not stupid, because this list of all the positive attributes of your addiction, well, guess what it turns into? Guess what it is? It is a list of needs that you must get if you want long-term, sustainable success. Just think about that for a second. How are you going to achieve long-term, sustainable sobriety, sanity, and success without having a clear understanding of your unmet needs, which are particularly important because all of your negative behavior is a function of your unmet needs. When you personify this addict part of yourself, right? We call that a subpersonality. And all of us have multiple subpersonalities, separate and distinct parts of ourselves that have different needs, wants, desires, and are often rooted in its own unique childhood experience or experiences. So this subpersonality, who is this part of yourself, this addict, and most of you have demonized that part of you. So engage this part of you in a conversation and ask this part of yourself, what is it? What needs are you getting met through your addictive behavior? What are the positive attributes of your acting out behavior? And there is a list of needs that you have to get met. Like, you have to get these needs met, right? If I didn't embrace my need for significance, if I kept trying to stuff that down and ignore it, if I didn't honor what Martin Luther King calls my drum major instinct, well, guess what? Suppress it, suppress it, suppress it, and like shaking the champagne with a rusty cork that keeps the addict in, explodes. And eventually it ruptures. Eventually that need will get met. Our bodies have an incredible ability to feed themselves. And if you are doing something contrary to your self-interest, instead of demonizing that part of yourself, love that part of yourself. Through loving that part of yourself, understand what are the unmet needs of that part of you. What needs is that part of you fulfilling? Connection, escape, a break, pain relief, alertness, awake, connection. The drugs that you're doing is doing something. People report all the time, when I take opiates, at least in the beginning, I feel normal. I'm like, when I first started, I was like, oh my God, this is how normal people feel? This is how normal people feel? Son of a bitch. I want more of this. And drugs and sex and whatever else it is presents this illusion that this is going to work long term. Well, guess what? I know it. You know it. It doesn't. Understanding your unmet needs is critically important, because at the core of your addiction is lack of love for self. Remember, your sex, your drugs, your alcohol, your gambling, your compulsive texting, whatever it is you're doing is a function of your unmet needs, right? And that part of you is where that lack of love for self resides. So understand this part of you, connect with this part of you, learn about this part of you, learn where these patterns established around coping, around self-control, around self-esteem, around self-worth, around value, around veracity, around numbing, coping, and escaping. And what you will see is an input, just like in a computer, that input of your experiences is creating the output today. So as you examine that part of yourself and you have the courage and bravery to play some chess, man, stop demonizing this part of yourself. It ain't gonna work. You're only hating on yourself, feeds lack of love for self, feeds the addiction. It's very, very simple. There is no other way. I'm sorry to break that news to you, but this hatred for that part of you is making it worse, And by understanding this part of you, this unmet needs, what positive attributes are there of your addiction, you get to understand that part of yourself even better. And you finish this exercise with a list of needs that you have to get met, or else you're not going to be successful. See, this all comes back to the golden rule of behavior modification. To break a habit, you have to make a habit. Do you think you're going to stop using drugs? You're going to stop having sex with prostitutes? You're going to stop going to strip clubs? You're going to stop watching porn and live a mediocre, boring, humdrum, shitty, average existence? No! The cure for this, for your addiction, is the aggressive pursuit of a great life. To break a habit, you have to make a habit. And those habits that you make must meet the needs of the mind, body, and spirit. You have to understand your unmet needs. You have to understand this part of you. And you can't do that when you've demonized this part of you. You can't do that when you hate this part of you. So think about this part of you from a very, very different perspective. Maybe this part of you is a friend who needs help and needs compassion. You wouldn't treat the friend like you treat yourself. You wouldn't treat a kid like you treat yourself. So be honest with yourself and answer this question. What are the positive attributes of your addiction? And therein you will have a list of needs that you need to fulfill in a proactive, constructive way. Okay? So I don't want to make light, right? I know some of you listening, your addiction has cost you considerable things. Okay? But that happened. That's the past, right? It's gone. Nothing you can do about that. But if you want to use this crisis as an opportunity to grow and change in profound ways and learn more about yourself than ever imaginable, then you need to have a clear understanding of the needs in your life that your addiction is meeting. And from there, you can create a list of your unmet needs. And then you can start getting those needs met in a healthy, constructive way without the addiction, without the behaviors that are ruining your life. So stop demonizing yourself. Put pen to paper. Write down a list of all the positive attributes of your addiction. And there is your list. There's an action list of things that you need to do. A list of things that you need to do. A part of yourself that must be honored, respected, cherished, loved, treated with kindness and empathy. Like, don't disown that part of you. Don't abandon that part of you. Don't try to kill that part of you, because you're only really making things worse. You are. You see that, right? You are only making it worse if you continue down that path. So what did we learn today? Quick recap. Number one, don't watch porn at work. It will get you fired. Please, 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 please. I have so many men calling me who, on their way home from work, tough calls. That's when they decided to get help, right? And it's often a crisis that prompts people into getting help. Those calls are tough, man, because this is a guy who's going to go home The next phone call he makes after me is to his wife or his partner to tell her that he got fired. So don't watch porn at work. It will get you fired. Number 2, embrace your addict. In your addict, there are lots of clues to understand yourself in a much better way. All of our negative behavior is a function of our unmet needs. Explore the needs of addict, and you will have a list of needs that you need to get met in your life in a powerful, positive, constructive way. That's how you create sustainable results. That's how you create sustainable results. Memento mori, brothers and sisters. That means remember death. You are going to die. Life is too short to suck. Thank you for listening. I'll catch you next week. Bye-bye.